And those gentlemen are Jeff Bridges in The Last Picture Show, and the winner is Sally Ben Johnson in The Last Picture Show. Wagon turned over and had 3 actors inside it, and it's dragging towards a sheer rock wall. The golden age of westerns from the 1940s to the 1960s has brought forth some of the most iconic cowboy films, along with several actors, one of whom is Ben Son Johnson. Dre man of many talents, Johnson was not only a motion picture actor, he was also a stuntman rancher and of course a cowboy. Johnson didn't have it easy and, like many others, he fought tooth and nail to get where he was. But, surprisingly, there's one thing the actor refused to do. Despite making a name for himself and accumulating riches, to understand why the actor chose to do this, we need to look back and revisit how Johnson came to be before Ben Son Johnson. Jr. rose to fame in the West. He was just like any other young man. He was born Francis Benjamin Johnson Jr. on June 13, 1918, in Fora, Oklahoma, at the Osage Indian Reservation. His parents were Ben Johnson Sr. and his wife Ole Susan Johnson. His father, however, was very much a multifaceted cowboy when he was born. In fact, the city knows his father as a well-known rancher and champion. Roperand, the city honors him with an annual memorial named after him since his father had a deep history rooted in the West and was a well-known cowboy. It didn't come as a surprise that Johnson Jr. willingly followed in his father's footsteps. He did that and more because the world knew. Johnson Jr. was an ordinary cowboy. He was an icon whose name will live on long after he's gone, even up to now. His legacy as an actor and cowboy still echoes to this day. Back to their story, you could imagine how much of an influence his father and surroundings were on Johnson Jr. Pusa Wash's home, and the place where he spent his boyhood learning all about the cowboy life. At the young age of 11, he started cowboying at the Chapman Barnard Ranch in 1929, where his father served as the ranch's foreman. At the time, the Chapman Barnard Ranch was hailed as one of the largest in the state, boasting a land area of 100,000 acres and running approximately 18,000 to 20,000 head of cattle through it yearly. Because of this vast area, they needed to employ a lot of cowboys in the area, so back then, the place was home to around 10 to 40 cowboys most of the time, including our humble Johnson Jr. Aside from attending the ranch and fulfilling his other duties, it was also during this time that Johnson became more interested in and hands-on with rodeoing. He would have spent the rest of his life manning their ranch. But as fate would have it, Johnson Jr. was destined for something else. It came in the form of a chance encounter with several people who were working for Howard Hughes. At the time, Hughes was in the middle of shooting a movie, The Outlaw, starring Jane Russell, back in 1940. What's a Western movie without a horse? Right, this is where Johnson Jr. squeezed his way in. Ranch to but not movies. As part of the crew. Filming he was the one who delivered Flagstaff, Arizona, the horses from there, riding his own horse to deliver. The herd. Ben Johnson didn't know it then, but this seemingly ordinary act would catch the eye of Howard Hughes. As the crew wrapped up shooting, Johnson was tasked with taking the horses back to Hollywood, little suspecting that his life was about to take a major turn. Hughes was so impressed by his writing skills that he decided to hire Johnson on the spot, and the legendary actor couldn't have said it any better. Himself, I could always ride a horse pretty good, and I was a wrangler going into business. The young Johnson was quickly signed up at the Screen Actors Guild, where he learned how to act. But in his primary years in the industry, Johnson played more as a stuntman and a double among the famous actors he had to double. For were Joel McCrea, Randolph Scott, Jimmy Stewart, Gary Cooper, and the legendary John Wayne, after all. If we're talking about cowboys, it's impossible not to associate the icon with the Western genre, and it's safe to say that Johnson made a name for himself and joined this Hollywood A-listers in the future. Despite taking acting lessons and even winning awards for several performances later in his career, Johnson kept his head low and remained humble, probably because he knew he got into the industry because of his skills as a cowboy and a rancher. I've been one of the more fortunate people in the business. I've been able to play Ben Johnson and make a living at it. Everybody in town is a better actor than I am, but no one can play Ben Johnson as good as I can. At least the actor knows how to live up to his individuality. Acting on the sidelines was enough for the country folk. Johnson at the time never knowing that his breakout was just around the corner. Thankfully, because of his perseverance in showing his best, no matter what role was given to him, a high-profile figure finally noticed him. The director John Ford, the way it happened is nothing short of amazing because destiny was at play. The year was 1948 and Johnson was working as a double for Henry Fonda in the movie Fort Apache. They were in the middle of a shoot when 3 horses tethered to a wagon with 3 men in it suddenly stampeded. Then 30-year-old Johnson was waiting on his saddle-off camera when he saw the scene unfold without any hesitation. The up-and-coming actor acted quickly and chased the runaway wagon. Thankfully, his skills as a cowboy proved useful, since he managed to save the wagon and the 3 men inside it like a Western superhero. This whole ordeal impressed John Ford so much that as a token of his gratitude, he promised Johnson that he would repay him for what he did that day. And no good deed truly goes unrewarded, because lo and behold, John Ford offered him a 7-year contract. This was more than what Johnson had in mind. In fact, he only hoped that he could do more stunt work and double in on more projects. But the director had greater things in mind for him, just when he thought that the director's offer couldn't be grander. He read the contract and read that he would receive a $5,000 salary. So Johnson did what any of us would have done at that time. He stopped reading, grabbed a pen, and signed the contract. Coming from his meager $30 per month salary from their ranch to the $300 offer they had of him. Delivering horses back then, the $5,010 weekly salary was an instant boost, and for Johnson he truly believed that this amount of money was quite the catch, with which we agree. Considering the year was 1949, thanks to Ford's contract, gone are the days when he could only work as a stuntman or double in a scene. He went top play small speaking roles and worked his way to the top. Some of his earlier works include Three Godfathers in 1948, She Wore a Yellow Ribbon in 1949, and Wagon Master in 1950. 1949 saw Ben Johnson land a supporting role in John Ford's Western romance Rio Grande alongside John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara. But Rio Grande wasn't just any film for Johnson. It held 2 pivotal moments that shaped his career. The first was a daring stunt alongside fellow stuntmen Claude Jamin, Grand Harry Carey Jr. They pulled off the impressive Roman riding scene themselves. This feat cemented Johnson's reputation in the industry forever, etching him in the minds of Western film fans. He masterfully showcased his cowboy skills, but his true calling, as we'll see later, lay beyond stunts. The feat was so impressive that to this day, any fan of Western films knows about it further, proving that Ben Johnson has cemented his career in the industry. He was immortalized in that scene, showcasing his best abilities as a cowboy, but there was more to his calling, which he later took up in life, a calling he finally answered in 1953, which we will discuss later. The other key event of his life at the time was that unknown to the public. There was a brewing animosity between the director and Johnson. You see, despite Johnson's usual portrayal of intimidating and tough characters, he's actually a gentle spirit through and through off-screen. He was known for his calm demeanor and was never easy to rise tongue. But he did have firm boundaries, which is why he clashed heads with John Ford. Word on the street was that Johnson Jr. stood up against the director, known for intimidating the actors. On set, Johnson refused to be intimidated by Ford, telling him to go to hell. They managed to wrap up filming there, and Johnson believed that the director brushed it under the rug, only to discover that Ford took offense to that. As a result, Ford refused to work with him for more than a decade. But it didn't matter much back then, because they soon reconciled and worked on other Western projects down the road. While Ford was giving him the cold shoulder, Johnson found himself working with another director. And this time it was with Samuel "Bloody Sam" Peckinpah. He was the man behind the reins for the 1969 Western epic The Wild Bunch, which ranked 80 on the American Film Institute's Top 100 list at the time of its release. Many were quite shocked by this epic revisionist Western film thanks to its graphic violence and how it portrayed crude men's attempts at survival. Simply put, the film was pretty brutal something the public wasn't quite ready for, and earned him the moniker Bloody Sam. Still, it left its mark in the Western genre, and Ben Johnson was more than happy to be able to work with someone like him. In fact, they worked on 4 films together, with Pina holding Johnson in high regard for his authenticity and humility. The acting bug wasn't the only one buzzing around Ben Johnson. Deep down the call of the rodeo, a familiar rhythm from his younger days, wouldn't be ignored. In 1953, he decided to take a step back from Hollywood and charge headfirst into the road rodeo circuit. This wasn't a complete departure, mind you. Even before this, Johnson would squeeze in rodeoing whenever he had a free day between filming. But now it was time for a full-fledged return to his roots. And what a return it was, joining the Rodeo Cowboys Association. Johnson went on to conquer the arena, becoming the Team Ring World Champion that very same year. In the competition, Johnson roped and tied for an impressive 12.5 second and 62 score. This wouldn't have been possible if Johnson didn't have enough money to take a leave from the acting industry. Something he was pretty well aware of. I got in a position where I could afford